In this video, I'm going to tell you about 3 jobs that involve Excel that you may not have heard of, but you really want to pay attention because not only are they Excel heavy jobs, so if you love Excel, you're going to love these jobs, but they are very lucrative roles. As the world of work evolves, Excel skills are needed more than ever before. Number 1, MI Analyst. MI stands for Management Information. So this kind of role exists typically in bigger organizations with bigger budgets where there's typically projects happening or there's change happening, and there is a need for someone who can report on all of this change going on. And that's where the MI or Management Information Analyst would come in. So they do a lot of reporting. Now, what you have to typically do is that you would have to speak to various people that are working on the projects, programs, executives, project managers, business analysts, and you'd have to combine and collate data, and you'll have to create reports. And reports, this is MI. So MI is management information. That means the implication is it's all about decision-making insight. And really, you're going to spend probably about half of your time dealing with data, Excel, and getting information and creating the reports. And then the other half of the time, you're going to be spending with people, whether it's gathering the information, whether it's with execs and the PMs and BAs and relaying that information and communicating it outwards. And as I mentioned, this is a very lucrative job. If you get this kind of a role in a big organization, certainly in London, you're looking at probably upwards of about 100K for this kind of a role. Number 2 is BI Analyst, or Business Intelligence Analyst. Also, you could be a business intelligence developer or a business intelligence consultant, but the point is it's business intelligence that we're dealing with. Now, this varies from the first role, which was an MI Analyst, in a very important way, in that whereas the MI Analyst probably spends about 50% of their time dealing with data and actually creating outputs, the BI Analyst will spend more time, maybe 70, 80, even more time creating outputs. And not only that, their role is to deal more with data. So you have to go beyond Excel. You'll need to be really good with wielding data. So you'll have to have Power Query, Power Pivot, without a doubt. But most likely, in this day and age of data, you're going to have to be able to deal with actual databases. So the most common one is SQL Server, but many other companies are moving on to cloud. So you'll have AWS technology and various other technologies. But being able to wrangle SQL Server and being able to use SQL as a querying language, that's almost a must. Now, you combine that with Excel and you get some brilliant outputs, but also you'll be using some visualization such as Power BI maybe, or Tableau or Click, which are probably the 3 market leaders. But that's the idea, in that you're working close with the data and there's a lot of real-time data coming in. So a lot of mid-sized companies and smaller companies have the need for business intelligence developers, not just the big ones, whereas the MI Analyst is going to typically just work in bigger companies. The BI Analyst will work in a range of companies. That's why a lot of BI Analysts tend to be consultant. And as I mentioned, you probably spend 70, 80% of your time wrangling data and producing outputs, and then 20% of your time probably communicating them outwards. You don't really need to do so much of that. So that's a big difference between the 2 roles. So the BI Analyst, if you think about this, can be more of an introvert because you've got to spend more time with your, sitting in front of data, running queries, creating reports, whereas the MI Analyst has to not only do that, but then they've got to get out in front of people and get those outputs out there. Now, the third role that you may or may not have heard of is PMO. And this is near and dear to my heart. I've spent a lot of time as a PMO. I've worked in those other roles as well for shorter stints, but PMO is kind of where I evolved my career. And that's more about, PMO stands for Project Management Office. And that's about working in a fairly big organization where they've got big budgets and they're introducing change. And you've got multiple projects going on. Now, in order to keep a hold and a handle and an understanding of how those projects are progressing, you need a PMO. This is somebody who's going to look at all of those projects and look at what the common issues are, what the common problems and the risks are, look at how things are progressing as a whole, what the dependencies are between those 2 things, and relay that back to the program manager, the program director, so they can make actual information. They might decide, oh, we're going to kill a project halfway through because there's just too many problems happening with it, or there's a problem happening on this project and there's a dependency on that project down there, and the problems over there are going to deal with that, so we're going to move our resources onto that. And really, a lot of it's project project-based data, and it's a lot of data that we're talking about. And so really I cut my teeth in PMO, and it helped me to break out into more project management and program management roles, which are all very lucrative, and PMO is of course very lucrative. So I hope you found that useful. These are 3 roles you may or may not have heard of, and these roles are growing. They are not getting, they're not diminishing, they are growing, and there's going to be more of them in the future. So I strongly suggest that you look into these kinds of roles. You can, if you're already underway, if your career is underway, you can, and you're working with Excel, you can pivot to these kind of roles, no problem. I'll see you in the next video.